Stop what you are doing, because this word is not floating through the air by accident. It has come for you. On this Friday, the feeling of loneliness that has followed you through closed rooms, quiet nights, and unfinished conversations is being touched by a new light. You have carried a silence that looked ordinary to everyone else, but inside you knew it was heavier than that. Tonight I am not speaking to a crowd. I am speaking to the one who has been waiting without saying so. You have felt the hour stretch, the messages slow, the house get still, and your own chest ask a question your mouth never formed. This is not a random moment, and it is not a distant message. It is the kind of word that arrives when the heart has already been tired for too long. I know how a lonely evening can make even the smallest sound feel too large. I know how the lamp in a room can stay on while your hope feels dim. I know how you can sit near your phone and still feel far from everyone. But something is being named before you can name it yourself. What looked like emptiness is not the end of your story. What looked like delay is not rejection. What looked like a closed door is not the final word. Stay with me, because the first thing you will recognize is that heaven has not forgotten your address. You have been carrying loneliness in ways other people never notice, and that weight has settled into your body like a second skin. You wake up, and the room is the same, but your breath already feels measured, as if you are entering the day with part of yourself still left behind. You move through the kitchen, the bathroom, the hallway, and each place keeps its shape while something inside you keeps asking where the warmth went. Some nights you sit on the edge of the bed and stare at the wall, and the wall does not answer, only reflects the lamp and your own tired face. Your shoulders have learned the posture of waiting, and your hands know what it is to hold a phone without opening anything. There's a sentence inside you that you rarely say aloud. Why does this feel so long? Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. That sentence is not weakness. It is the place where your soul has been speaking through your body. The tension in your chest is not only emotion, it is a signal that you have been carrying more than you were meant to carry alone. Even your silence has become patterned, almost careful, like you are trying not to disturb a pain that already lives there. And yet that pain is not proof that you are abandoned. It is proof that you have been awake to what others ignore. It is the reason this message reaches you with such precision. What is happening around you is not random, and what is happening inside you is not meaningless. You are not being punished by this season. You are being shown something about the shape of your own heart. There are moments when loneliness is only loneliness, and there are moments when it is a room being prepared for a deeper kind of arrival. I'm speaking carefully here, because not every closed door means the same thing, but this one may be protecting what you would have rushed to place in unsafe hands. By the end of this word, you will recognize the signs you have been feeling. You will understand one pattern that keeps trying to pull you back into the old ache, and you will see why the silence has been doing a hidden work. You will also hear the practice that begins your return, not as performance, but as a way back to yourself. And before the close, a declaration will be spoken over you that does not flatter you. It steadies you. This is not a message of hype. It is a message of recognition. The loneliness you felt may have been the place where discernment was learning your name. The waiting may have been forming a stronger patience than fear can counterfeit. And the new thing is not far away from you. It has already started to lean toward your life. You know the kind of afternoon when the light falls through the curtains and lands on the floor in a quiet stripe, while the rest of the house stays still. You may be sitting at a table with a cup cooling beside you, looking at a room that has held the same furniture for months, yet somehow the room no longer feels like it fits the person sitting inside it. The calendar on the wall keeps turning, the clock keeps moving, but something in you has stopped agreeing with the old pace. Your eyes rest on ordinary objects, the chair, the keys, the folded cloth, and each one feels like it belongs to a life that is changing under your feet. That is why loneliness has felt sharper, because the world has remained the same while your inner life has not. The body notices what the mind tries to explain away. The stomach tightens before the explanation arrives. The throat goes quiet before the words can form. You think you are only tired, but sometimes you are actually being invited into a deeper truth. The old atmosphere cannot hold the new awareness. The ordinary room becomes a mirror, and in that mirror you realize that your soul has outgrown pretending. You are not losing yourself. You are being made honest. And honesty always begins with a room that no longer lets you lie comfortably. There is a reason this message finds the one who has been sensitive, even when sensitivity felt inconvenient. You notice shifts before they become obvious, and that has made you feel different in rooms where other people move easily. You hear the tone behind the words, the pause before the answer, the distance inside a familiar voice. That does not make you fragile. It makes you attentive. The chosen one is not the one who never feels, but the one whose heart refuses to harden into denial. You have learned that a quiet unease can say more than a loud opinion, and that awareness has sometimes left you feeling alone among people who settle for surface answers. The loneliness was never proof that you were less. It was often the cost of perceiving more. You may have thought, I should be over this by now, but the truth is that what you feel is not a defect to erase. It is discernment being trained. There is a kind of weight that comes with seeing what others miss, and it asks you to carry it without turning it into pride or despair. Even your tears, when they come in private, have been part of that training. Heaven does not waste a sensitive heart. It shapes it, and what feels like isolation may be the first sign that you are no longer able to live by borrowed language. The opposition has not always been dramatic, and that is why it has been so effective. It has looked like ordinary distraction, the small noise that fills your day before you can sit still long enough to hear your own soul. It has looked like pressure to answer quickly, to explain yourself, to keep pace with people whose urgency is not your calling. It has looked like comparison, that quiet thief that enters when you measure your private process against someone else's visible life. You pick up your phone, check the same place twice, open and close messages, and still the ache remains. You sit in a car before starting the engine and feel the weight of all the little things that never resolved. This is not only busyness, it is the strategy of scattering. When the heart is almost ready to recognize its direction, distraction tries to make everything feel equally important. Your breathing shortens, your attention frays, your peace gets interrupted by lesser urgencies. That is why the battle has felt so domestic, so close to the floor of your everyday life. But the closeness of the struggle does not mean the struggle owns you. It means the signal is near, and the opposition knows it. You are being asked to notice what steals your inner quiet before it names itself as necessity. There is a biblical echo here that speaks softly but clearly, because it belongs to a life that has been delayed without being destroyed. Think of Elijah by the brook, sustained in a place that did not look like progress. while the visible answer came in a form he did not control. Your own waiting has often felt like that, a small stream of provision in a season that did not resemble the promise you expected. You may have wanted the full answer already, the open road, the easy yes, the immediate relief, but what you were given instead was enough for today. And enough for today is not the same as nothing. In your life, that has looked like one honest conversation, one quiet prayer, one moment in the kitchen when you realized you could not keep pretending you were fine. You have wondered whether the delay meant distance, but sometimes delay is simply the way preservation speaks. The wrong interpretation would have called the Brook failure. The truer interpretation sees it as a place where dependence was being taught without humiliation. You are not the first person to learn that God can feed a soul in a hidden place. The old mind calls it waiting. The deeper meaning may be preparation. And that difference changes everything about how you stand inside the day. If you ignore the signal, nothing explodes at once, and that is part of the danger. You simply keep moving through the same loop, answering from habit, smiling from reflex, and calling fatigue by a lighter name. The heart that refuses to listen becomes less tender with time. Not because it is evil, but because it is tired of being unheard. Then the room gets louder, even when nobody speaks. The mind starts filling every silence with explanation. The body carries the burden of what the spirit has already recognized. You may begin to feel numb where you once felt deeply, and that numbness can be mistaken for peace if you are not careful. But real peace does not flatten you. It steadies you. There is a difference between surrender and shutdown. One opens the door, the other locks it from the inside. You have already lived enough to know that pretending everything is normal does not heal what is changing. It only postpones the truth. If you keep ignoring what is being revealed, the loneliness can become a habit instead of a passage. And if you receive it, it becomes a threshold. That is why the next movement matters. The recognition is already here, and now the question is whether you will let it name you honestly. If even one of these signs has landed in you, if your shoulders dropped at any point in the last few minutes, type 888 in the comments. This number is not magic, and it is not an energy code. It is a small sign of overflow, a quiet way of saying that what was spoken found a place to rest in you. Sometimes agreement begins with something simple enough for your hands to do before your mind finishes explaining. Type 888, then come back to me. What you write becomes a witness to the moment you recognize that this was about you. It is not for spectacle, it is for confirmation. The smallest act of recognition is still real, and real things leave a mark. Come back to me, because the deeper pattern is now opening, and it is not only about what you lost. It is about what has been guarded while you were learning how to be still. What has been happening to you is more than a mood, more than a temporary rough week, more than the simple ache of being unseen. There is a deeper layer under the loneliness, and it touches the way you trust, the way you wait, and the way you react when the room goes quiet. You have carried an old instinct to fill every gap before it becomes discomfort, to reach for control before surrender can feel safe. That is why this season has felt both empty and revealing. It is not only removing noise, it is showing you what noise was covering. You may have thought you were asking for company, but beneath that request was a need to be certain that nothing in you would be left exposed. This is where the message becomes tender and exact. The loneliness may be exposing an old survival pattern, and the exposure is not shame, it is mercy. You are being invited to see the root, not only the branch. And once you see the root, you stop blaming every leaf that falls. The deeper work has already begun, and now it is asking you to stay present long enough to let it speak. The root is not that you are incapable of being loved. The root is that you have sometimes trusted control more quickly than you trusted peace. That pattern can hide itself inside responsibility, inside overthinking, inside the need to explain every feeling before you allow it to exist. You know the sensation of checking everything twice, of preparing answers before the question is even asked, of carrying conversations in your head before they happen. That effort has protected you in some seasons, but it has also exhausted you. There are moments when the heart confuses control with safety and calls that wisdom. Yet wisdom is quieter than that. It does not need to grip everything to remain steady. It can sit in a silent room and not panic. It can wait for a door without forcing it. It can admit without embarrassment that the old script no longer serves you. The fear of losing control often masquerades as discernment, but the body knows the difference. Your shoulders know, your jaw knows, your sleep knows. You have reached a place where the old way of managing life cannot keep naming itself as strength. The new thing begins the moment you stop negotiating with the fear beneath the habit. Inside your mind, body, and spirit, 3 different voices have been speaking, and you need to hear the difference between them. The mind has been trying to reason the loneliness into something acceptable. The body has been carrying the tension, making it harder to rest, harder to breathe deeply, harder to pretend you do not notice. The spirit has been leaning toward a quieter conclusion, one that does not shout but remains. That is why some days you feel restless for no obvious reason, and other days you feel calm in the middle of uncertainty. Not every unease is a warning, and not every calm is indifference. There is a discernment that lives below the noise of anxiety, and it often speaks first through a settled discomfort with what once seemed manageable. You may have thought, "This should not bother me this much." But the bother is revealing a boundary. You are not meant to live against your own inner witness. The confusion comes when fear speaks in the language of urgency and the spirit speaks in the language of clarity. One pushes, the other guides. One tightens, the other steadies. You are learning to tell the difference by what happens in your chest when you sit still, and that learning is costly because it asks you to trust the quieter voice before the louder one fades. Not every room welcomes the person you are becoming, and not every conversation can hold the truth you now carry. You have felt it when you enter a place and immediately sense the pressure to shrink, to explain, to perform the old version of yourself. You have felt it in text threads that leave you more drained after one exchange than after an entire day of work. You have felt it around people who mean well, but keep pulling you back into the version of you that was easier to manage. That does not mean everyone around you is against you. It means discernment is now part of your responsibility. Some environments feed the old self because they depend on the old self remaining in place. Some voices only sound supportive while they quietly resist your change. You do not need paranoia to see that. You only need enough honesty to notice what expands peace and what compresses it. There is a difference between love and access, and you are learning it slowly. The room does not always become safer because you want it to. Sometimes you become wiser because you stopped confusing familiarity with belonging. That realization is not cruel, it is clarifying, and clarity, though it can sting, is often the first relief your soul has had in a long time. The strategy against you has been to keep you busy enough that you cannot notice what is settling in your spirit. It stacks small tasks on small tasks until the day feels full but not fulfilled. It delays the quiet moment when you would remember what you already know. It confuses timing by making every unfinished thing sound equally urgent. It plants doubt in the middle of movement, so you keep circling instead of crossing. You are not imagining how the pressure multiplies when you are close to a decision. Suddenly, there are messages to answer, people to reassure, plans to adjust, and 1,000 minor interruptions that all pretend to be necessary. The old pattern wants you exhausted before obedience can become simple. But exhaustion is not the same as guidance. The spirit does not need to scream to be heard. It often speaks best when the noise around it has lost its authority. You have lived in a season where lesser urgencies tried to dress themselves as destiny. Now you are beginning to see through the costume. What looked like random overload was often a tactic. What looked like innocent delay was often interference. And what looked like silence may have been the only space where the truth could survive. There comes a point when the heart stops bargaining with what it already knows. You reach a threshold where explanation feels thin and repetition feels dishonest. That is where you are now. Something in you has already decided it cannot keep circling the same ache with the same old answers. You can feel it in the way you pause before answering certain people, in the way you hesitate to enter some conversations, in the way your body resists the roles it used to wear easily. That resistance is not rebellion for its own sake. It is the edge of freedom. You do not need to announce the change loudly for it to be real. You only need to stop pretending the old arrangement still fits. There is a strange mercy in that moment because it ends the private war between what you feel and what you keep forcing yourself to call normal. The threshold does not demand perfection. It demands honesty. And honesty says the loneliness has become a teacher, not a tomb. What you do with that truth will shape the next step more than any feeling will. The door is not asking you to run. It is asking you to be willing. The image I am walking with you through now is a gate that has been half covered for a long time, as if a vine had grown over it while nobody was watching. At first it looked like part of the wall, something fixed, something to accept. But over time the cover has started to thin, and the shape underneath becomes harder to deny. You have known this kind of moment in your own life, when something familiar no longer hides what it is. A gate is not a wall. A gate means access, even when it is not open yet. You may have stared at what felt sealed and assumed that nothing lived behind it. Yet the very resistance you felt was proof that there was a boundary, and boundaries are not the same as endings. They protect, they define, they wait. Your loneliness has often been the sound of you standing before that hidden gate without language for what you were sensing. The old story said, "This is all there is." The deeper truth says, "This is only covered." That difference changes the posture of your soul. You stop begging the wall and start listening for the gate, and once you hear that distinction, even your breathing changes. There was a time when the gate seemed invisible because the overgrowth was so thick, and that is how old patterns usually work. They do not begin with drama. They begin with repetition, with survival, with the need to remain safe in whatever way was available. You learned how to stay guarded, how to keep the inner room tidy, how to answer with caution when trust felt expensive. That history matters because it explains why the cover became accepted as part of the structure. You did not choose all of it. Some of it was handed to you by pressure, disappointment, or the need to keep moving when you were not ready. But the hidden gate did not become a wall by nature. It became one in your memory. Now that memory is being challenged by a softer but stronger reality, the thing you thought was fixed is beginning to loosen at the edges, and loosening can feel like threat if you have lived too long with sealed doors. Still, the looseness is mercy. It is the first sign that what was closed is not dead. It is only waiting for the right kind of attention. You are being invited to see the old cover without worshipping it. The opposition inside this image was never just the vine itself, but the fear that taught you to stop reaching for the handle. You began to live as if the covering were the truth, and that made you careful, even suspicious, about any sign of change. You adjusted your expectations downward so you would not be disappointed again. You told yourself that if the gate was meant for you, it would have opened already, and that sounded mature, while it quietly numbed your hope. But numbness is not the same as wisdom. Wisdom notices the cover, names the obstruction, and keeps watch without panic. The old response was to stop looking so you would not ache. The new response is to look long enough to see what is really there. You may feel the tug to return to resignation, because resignation is familiar and quiet and easy to mistake for peace. Yet the renewed gaze is not sentimental. It is precise. It sees that the obstruction is not the whole structure. It sees that what covered the gate was never allowed to define the gate forever. And it sees that you have been living too close to the covering and too far from the access. Now the image begins to move, and movement is what makes the difference between coping and receiving. You can almost feel the first loosening, like a latch that has not been touched in a long while, or a hinge that remembers it was made to turn. The covered thing does not vanish all at once. It shifts, it breathes, it gives way in small places before it gives way in large ones. That is how real change often feels inside a human life, quieter than the dramatic version you once expected. You watch a door that once seemed locked and realize the seal is not as final as you thought. You notice a conversation you were afraid to have becoming possible in your chest before it ever reaches your mouth. You feel the air around the gate change. That change is not imagination. It is the sign that the old covering is no longer as convincing as it used to be. Your body senses it before your mind can celebrate it. Your shoulders lower, your breath deepens. Even your thoughts begin to slow down enough to notice that the movement has started. The gate is not the enemy. The gate is becoming visible, and visibility is often the first miracle. If this image is landing in a place you cannot fully explain, type Eu vejo isso in the comments. Let the recognition settle where it has landed. This is not about performance. It is about naming the moment honestly before it slips back into private memory. Sometimes the soul needs one simple phrase to admit that it has truly seen what was hidden. Type Eu vejo isso, then come back to me. What you are typing is not a slogan. It is agreement with the moment when the covered thing began to move. Come back to me, because the return is now becoming practical, and the next step is not more pressure. It is a quieter way of living that keeps the gate in view. What opens after the gate begins to move is not a new personality, but a steadier way of standing inside the one you already are. You stop forcing yourself to be louder than you feel. You stop confusing urgency with direction. You begin to notice that some things lose their authority over you simply because you are no longer feeding them with fear. That is the beginning of return. The return is not to the old hiding place, and it is not to the old performance. It is to the place where your soul can breathe without bargaining. You may not yet see the whole road, but you can feel the difference between being pushed and being led. That difference is sacred. It allows you to make decisions that do not need applause to become real. In practical terms, this means the small acts of the day start carrying more weight than the dramatic feelings. The way you answer the phone matters. The way you sit in silence matters. The way you choose what deserves your attention matters. The gate has been showing you that access and pace are not the same thing. Once you learn that, you stop running ahead of what is being prepared for you. There is a practice that begins here, and it is not complicated. When you wake, before the day gathers its noise, sit in the quiet for a little longer than usual and name what is already at the gate of your heart. Do not rush to fix it. Do not rush to explain it. Let the first honest sentence be enough. That practice trains you to recognize the difference between pressure and invitation. In the same way, when the day is ending and the house gets still, pause at the threshold of your room or your bed and notice what you are carrying into the night. This is not superstition. It is stewardship. The gate that has been hidden does not need your panic. It needs your attention. and attention offered gently becomes a form of trust. You may find that your body settles when your mind stops chasing every passing demand. You may find that the loneliness loosens when it is no longer treated as an enemy to outrun. The practice does not force the door. It teaches you how to stand before it without losing yourself. That is enough for now. Another practice also matters, and it belongs to the way you guard your peace without building walls around your soul. Before answering certain demands, let there be a small delay, even if only a breath, so you can hear whether the response rises from calm or from pressure. Notice. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.